Dr. Lim, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I am definitely looking forward to getting your perspective on some topics as far as therapy and mental health goes. So I first off really am kind of curious about first one I have here is the importance of emotional awareness. What's your take on emotional awareness?
The first thought that comes to my mind in emotional awareness is the age of the person. Let's go from a developmental progress. In awareness, children are very attuned to the awareness that happens within them. So it is very important that parents acknowledge the awareness of the child and recognize the feelings that they express. It is very important for parents to be attuned, be understanding, be empathic and compassionate rather than discount them or devalue it or minimize their feelings. When that awareness keeps being nurtured, a person over time will be more attuned to what is going on in their lives, whatever whatever that is burping within them. When they are discounted and told that they don't feel a certain way, they don't think a certain way, it's the wrong way of thinking, then they deviate from their own internal awareness.
So what do you think a parent can do to become more emotionally aware of themselves so they can show up better for their kids?
That's a great question. The first thing to think about is to listen. Listen to what is burping within you, be it in your headspace. The first thing that I would encourage people to do is the thought that first strikes you. What is it? Register that, think about that, acknowledge that. And as it simmers, what does it evolve into? Be attuned to that because our parents were very probably in the best interest of the child, sometimes not doing the best thing. They would try to minimize it. As adults, we have to learn to sit with what bursts within us, to acknowledge it, to remove the self-doubt, to put in more trust, more awareness, attunement, to listen to yourself and help things be more aligned. Make it a habit to share it. If you're unsure as to how to share it, you can say, at this point, this is what I'm thinking and feeling. It does not have to be like written in stone. It can be a sharing of, at this point, this is what I'm thinking. I may be wrong. So when you put it in those words, then people are more likely to hear you out. If those feelings persist, then talk about it, express it rather than suppress it.
Sure. And would you say that oftentimes parents react to their kids because of their own childhood experiences that they haven't really learned to understand?
Very true. As adults, parents, they have not learned sometimes to regulate their own emotions. They function out of anxiety, out of fear, out of self-doubt. Then they impose those agenda on their children. They would ask things, do you really feel that way? Are you sure? Are you sure this is what you feel? Are you sure that this is what happened? When you keep questioning that, then it puts a layer of doubt within the child or the adolescent. The better question is, tell me how did you reach this conclusion? How did you come to this decision? So when you explore that, then the child will get a chance to talk about it rather than, are you sure? Tell me more. How did you arrive at this? What makes you be so firm about this? I want to ask parents to go in to understand more rather than to refute it or to rebuttal it or to question it.
Sure. If you then approach those situations, those conversations with curiosity, then your child is more likely to learn from it and actually have a more collaborative experience with you.
In a way, you're training them to open up to you. You're making it safe. You're building a trusting relationship. When you question them, you lecture them, you give unsolicited advice, children, teens tend to shut down. So do friends, so do partners. To open up more conversations will help cement relationship more, will help more connection. Whenever a person comes to you, be it a child, spouse, parent, It's important to open it up and ask curious questions, inquisitive questions, ask questions that are more compassionate. Oh, I'm sorry, you had that feeling. Help me understand what other feelings show up when you were discounted
Mhm.
at work. Tell me how
Yeah.
you felt when your boss reprimanded you in front of the whole team.
So we often will hear people say, clients, things like that, say that their parent was a narcissist. I think I'm sure you've heard that a number of times. I've heard that a number of times in sessions. So when you think of the idea of narcissism and narcissist, what is your take on that? We'll hear a lot of clients say or claim that their parents were narcissists or they were married to a narcissist or whatever it might be. What would you say is your take on narcissism and your experience with it?
If I were to take the label narcissist out, I would go in to understand the behavior. So I would ask them to describe what the behavior is that is bothersome to you. What do you see them do? What are the transactions? And what is uncomfortable and what is unraveling for you? I would go in, break those pieces apart and understand that. Then I would go and say, sounds like when you are not acknowledged, when you're not heard, when you're discounted, this happens. What are some things that will help you feel more heard, more validated, more acknowledged? Rather than changing the narcissist, I would work on helping the client, the person, the parent express himself, herself, so that they get acknowledged, heard, and validated. Because
Yeah,
it's easy to just label somebody, it takes responsibility to help us look at our behavior, examine our behavior.
for sure. So what would you say are some behaviors that reflect self respect in a way that can shut the narcissistic behaviors down?
In building self-respect, it is very important to trust yourself, believe that your truth is valid, to be able to deliver it in a way that is more about expressing you rather than demanding change. Because when you express yourself and say, at this point, this is how I see it, this is how I view the situation, rather than say, you are doing it wrong, that's a warped perception. Take out the blame, put in more of your perception, take in more responsibility, take in more accountability. Don't get caught up in the back and forth, in the unnecessary no-win situation, because that only ramps it up, that only escalates unnecessary tension. That becomes the template in which how people function. It's very unnecessary.
Yeah, so just avoiding perpetuating it by feeding into it, and is a form of self respect, essentially.
Correct, correct.
So, after 30 something years as a therapist, what are some recent therapeutic buzzwords that you hear that are misused that feels annoying for you?
I think depression is overused, anxiety is overused, and I'll explain why. Sometimes depression is not depression, it could be a lot of unresolved issues that keeps putting them into the same entanglement, the same tangles. They use avoidance, isolating, self-muting. Over time, it becomes a very sad habit. Over time, the person feels like they are boxed in. They're not able to express himself or herself. Then they go, oh, this is depression. I would go in and look at different situations and look at the common theme in how they cope or not cope. Because if the person does not cope, they just keep sweeping things under the carpet, they keep muting themselves, they keep doing the same thing that allows things to pile up over time. Is back into the corner. They don't know how to speak up, even in
Right.
different situations.
That makes sense. It becomes a cyclical pattern of self abandonment that feels like depression.
Uh-huh. Same thing with anxiety. Sometimes anxiety may be in the form of catering behavior. I have maybe this self script that I'm supposed to please people, I'm supposed to get people's approval. That self-talk sets us up to be anxious. It's like in situations where you're uncomfortable, then you go, I'm supposed to please this person. I'm supposed to get their approval. That self-talk sets the person up to then get anxious, then change the way they talk, change the way they act, and then they become catering. Over time, it becomes anxiety driven and it becomes entangled in layers of pleasing, approval seeking behavior that is really unnecessary. I would like to look at what is the behavior, what is the script that leads one to be anxious, depressed, panicky, or doubtful.
Yeah, that makes sense. So actually exploring, is this depression or anxiety, or is it just my patterns showing up continually that are more harmful, learning how to unlearn those patterns.
And I'm more invested in looking at patterns than I am in labeling people,
Hmm.
because label will only back one into a corner. Whereas if you look at patterns, then you can say things like, what might be another way of thinking, another thought, another self-script that might help you liberate yourself rather than back yourself into a unnecessary corner. What scripts will help you feel more liberated? What scripts will help you feel more resolved, that is going to free you rather than imprison you?
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and I feel like a lot of times what can come about through that learning to change those patterns is a desire or feeling the need to set boundaries. And boundaries is another one of those words I think is a little overused these days. What's your take on boundaries?
Like you said earlier, if there's more self-respect, if there's more self-honoring, and when there's more self-dignity, boundaries does not have to be used all the time. Because if you enforce self-respect and if you honor yourself, if you continue to follow through and do what is always in your best interest, when people see you stand solidly and grounded in your values, then they are less likely to test your boundaries. Because
Fantastic.
even in finances, people will abuse it or take advantage of it when they see you waffle, when they see you're easy to target, easy to use, easy to use your financial resources or borrow money from you. If they see that you cater in when they present a sorrowful story and they see you cater, then they're more likely to take advantage of those boundaries. When there's more self-respect, it's a it's a easier way to remain grounded and remain solid in those, then people don't have to test it.
Yeah, so the more you respect yourself, the more people will naturally respect you.
Correct. And people read you, people will respond according to how you present yourself.
Got it. So I want to take that back to the parenting aspect of things because there are multiple different styles of parenting.
Yeah, look at that smile. Thank you, so smart. I'm gonna call this a
So taking it back to the parenting aspect of things, I wanted to talk a little bit about parenting styles because I think sometimes parents can feel like they need to set more boundaries than they actually have to based on this self-respect issue that we were talking about. First off, I was kind of curious about how you feel about authoritarian parenting and how it impacts kids.
So authoritarian, let's start off by saying children need consistency, they need firmness, they need stable background in which they can thrive. This will help them thrive. When parents are very solid in how they express themselves rather than waffling, or they are too lenient, it sets them up for children to test the boundaries. As parents, one of the things that they can do is, I think it's important to negotiate rules, negotiate privileges, but also you have the upper hand in that I'd like for you to give me your thoughts. I would also like to think about this so that we can reach a agreeable solution that is in the best interest of all. It is so important that parents show up firmly, show up openly, flexibly, show up consistently and show up as present people. I think if we show up with these traits, then we are able to work with our children. The goal is always have a mindset that you want to work with them, but not cater to them. Sometimes if there's situations when there's divorce or situations when there's shared custody, they parent out of guilt. That's what sets a child up to have more privileges that they might take advantage of. It's so important that you parent out of consistency, parent with courage, parent with trust, rather than parent out of guilt, fear, or anxiety.
For sure. I feel like another important one there is honesty as well and being transparent with our kids. I've noticed just as recently becoming a parent myself to a 10-year-old, just the ability to show myself to him as far as emotionally so he can see what I'm dealing with actually can help him to be more connected to me.
Correct. And children value that. Parents, they are hesitant to share their struggles. I think that's the level in which you share some of the things that you struggle with, not everything. And children appreciate that. Then they feel like they're grown up. They feel like they're important enough to hear some of the struggles that adults deal with because they find it interesting. You're also training them to problem solve when you disclose some of your own things. Sometimes you may want to present a situation at it could be at work. What do you think? How would you address that? So create those teachable moments.
Just like including them in your life and giving them an opportunity to learn from it. That's pretty cool. What would you say are some other ways then that we can remain connected to our children emotionally?
Great question. I think it's so important that as children start with the infancy, to build time to connect, to spend time with them, even in very small ways, in play. And all of us connect through play. To make time as they as they evolve into their toddlership years, into their 4 or 5 years old, make sure that it's not about reprimanding them or complaining about them or giving them a lot of time with their devices, the digital devices. Make sure that you spend time walking with them, talking with them, asking them what they're playing, what's going on at school. To connect with them through these simple ways, it doesn't have to be complicated. To make it a habit to connect with them in simple ways, then over time in their teenage years, then you have already built a foundation in which they are open. Make it a point in connecting with them to not give advice, to ask things like, how do you think? What do you think? How do you think you want this to work out? How do you think you want this to not work out? How will this behavior impact this behavior? Ask questions that is going to reinforce critical thinking, that's going to help them mature in how they solve problems. How is hiding from so and so, not being truthful to them, help build or hurt the relationship? Even when they come up with simplistic answers, ask them, how can you make it so that it can be more solvable? It can be a win-win situation. To present different viewpoints so that they can see the options available, not just a simplistic viewpoint. When parents take time to explore opportunities to dialogue complex questions, it will train them to learn to connect with other people, even when the relationship is sticky or uncomfortable.
Okay. Yeah, and I imagine that helps them feel more trusted as well in knowing that you're okay with them figuring out the process like in that collaborative way and actually learning it's like it's okay to make mistakes essentially.
Yes, yes.
So with that, how can we also stay connected to our spouses, partners? Life gets busy, life gets crazy. We're trying to stay connected with the kids as well. What are some ways that we can stay emotionally connected with our partners as well in when life gets busy?
And it's so easy to deviate from connection in the relationship because that's the easy thing to sacrifice, put it aside. It's very important to make it a priority to have regular time to talk in the day. When do you visit? When do you unravel with your spouse, share about the happenings of the day, the happenings that are challenging and the happenings that are joyful, the happenings that are easy and smooth. So it's important to share that and not just the negative things. When there's connection, it also builds in other things. It's easier to problem solve. When there's lack of connection, then people tend to be resentful and they tend to do the tit for tat sometimes. It's so important that couples take time to check in on a daily basis. When they have gone on for a while where they have not checked in, it's also important to regroup and say, when is a good time for us to check in? We often plan things in our schedule, on our calendar for this, that, and the other. That needs to be scheduled in. It's important to schedule that in at the beginning of the week, at the scheduled time. And when something comes out, say that you already have an appointment at that time. Don't say that you're meeting with my wife, because then they go, why don't you change it?
Yeah.
So don't provide them with the rationale. People understand it when we say you have an appointment. Make it a time to connect regularly. Also make sure you have time to have social things together without the children, because children can be the center of focus when they go with the parents. It's important to nurture that relationship over time.
Absolutely. My wife and I actually just got back from a trip to Chicago. It was our first trip out of state together, just the two of us. It definitely was a necessary thing. It helped connect us in new ways. We got to explore together and see a new part of the world. So it helped us give us new things to talk about and new insights about each other that we hadn't had before. Yeah, that intentional time together is definitely really important. How do you think that blame can show up in relationships when those things aren't happening, when the couple isn't intentional about being together and spending time together? How do you think blame can show up and impact the relationship?
It's a habitual habit. You can look at blame from how did her parents use that blame number in their relationships, his parents. If that shows up consistently or continually, it will be important to look at what do you want to introduce into the relationship. Instead of blame, we would like to introduce more collaboration, more win-wins, more understanding, more compassion. Somebody has to drop that weapon and say, we have used this, what can we do different to shift the energy so that it becomes more of a situation where we can talk. It's important for couples, when somebody brings up an issue, to listen and not to rebuttal. It's the rebuttal that leads to the back and forth that has no ending. You can rebuttal all you want. It takes away the importance of hearing each other. It takes away the trust, the connection. Set time to listen. While you feel blamed, it's important to understand that the person is expressing himself, herself, and the person is hurt. What is this person my spouse wanting me to understand? Take away your own defensiveness, put in more compassion. At this point, I want to listen to understand. I want to listen and ask curious questions. I want to listen to look at some of the patterns that has trapped us, some of the patterns that have sabotaged the relationship. How can we shift it so that we are not acting like two 5-year-olds?
Yeah, right. Yep. So what are some methods you would say someone can use who has grown up using defensiveness as a form of protection because they didn't have a voice when they were a child? So being defensive was the only way they could be heard. What are some ways that they can work to avoid being defensive?
I think to also understand when we are defensive, with certain behavior, we use that in the past. What were the feelings that we struggled with that caused us to be defensive? Maybe a person felt hurt. A person felt validated, invisible. Then they defend and then they protect themselves. Then they state their point even louder. I want to understand some of the underlying feelings, the primary feelings that covers or that causes defensiveness to show up. So in spouses, in counseling, I would ask them, when you're defensive, what are you struggling with? So take out the external layer of defensiveness. Understand that I'm struggling with feeling invisible, feeling unheard, feeling minimized. Share that with your spouse. When I'm unheard, minimized, invisible, I tend to speak louder, I become more defensive, I become more attacking. To be able to share that, then the person doesn't take it personally, or then they don't use their own defensiveness. It triggers it. Again, like I said, the then 2 5-year-olds show up in the conversation rather than adults in the room.
Absolutely. So we've kind of circled back to emotional awareness, quite naturally, it seems. So when it comes to emotional awareness, this is something that most of my clients struggle with. They've never been given the tools or the vocabulary they need to understand their emotions. What would you say are some of the best resources or methods someone can use to start becoming more emotionally aware and articulate?
Slowing down, looking inward, understanding when there is a knot in your throat, a knot in your stomach. What is the knot saying? What is the feeling? Describe that. If you don't know the feeling, describe it. As you describe it, you may be able to pinpoint and identify the feeling. If you're a journaling person, learn to journal that. The knot is about being attacked. When attacked, I get tense up, and then this knot builds up, and I'm choked up. I'm not able to express myself as openly as I want to be. So the knot is about my voice being minimized, being attacked. To be in tune to where the tension is in your body, to be able to start recognizing it, what usually happens that causes this knot to show up, this big tension to show up in your stomach. I would be more in tune to looking at those situations and then describing it. Look at what are some similarities at other times when these knotted feelings show up. And then be able to share about it with a trusting friend, a trusting partner. Make it a priority to share about it rather than to suppress it. Because when you share your problem or the feelings subside, when it's not shared, it tends to multiply internally.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Thankfully, we live in an age where if they still can't pinpoint the emotion, they can just Google a list of emotions to see what they all actually are.
And to see what are the other connecting emotions. Because with one emotion, there are other connecting emotions. So there are layers of emotions that you want to address and not just go to the ultimate secondary one. So look at the other primary emotions that are all layered, connected to the knot.
Absolutely. Okay. So to wrap up for today, do you have any other final thoughts on any of the topics that we touched on today? Anything really standing out to you?
Important to be attuned, be important to trust yourself, respect yourself, honor yourself. Make that your priority, because when you honor these scripts, your self-talk will shift and you will present yourself differently. That will help you connect more, show up for yourself, because then people will show up for you.
Man, that's a big one. I would definitely agree with that. That's something I've learned only recently myself, is just the importance of showing up for myself first instead of trying to be what everybody else needs as like the forefront of my behaviors. The more that I've shown up for myself, the more that I've learned to be myself for others, the more that they've shown up for me very naturally. So,
Thanks for the opportunity.
absolutely. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to having more of these conversations with you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.